In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to change image dimensions in Photoshop. You want the image files you use on your website to be saved at the same dimensions they're going to be displayed, which means you might need to resize them. In these examples, imagine that we want to show a square image on our site that's 300 pixels wide and 300 pixels tall. If the image file is larger than we want it to appear on the site, the image can take longer to download, and it might increase your hosting costs. So we'd want to reduce the size of the image to make it the same dimensions that it's going to be shown on the site. Unfortunately, if an image is too small and you try to show it larger, it can look grainy. This image was only 50 pixels by 50 pixels and doesn't look good when we increase the size. So we'd have to select a different shot. Here we have another square image. This is currently 800 pixels wide and 800 pixels tall. We only want to show it at 300 pixels by 300 pixels, so we go to the Image menu and select the Image Size option. This allows us to specify the width and height that we want the image to be. Because the drop-down menu here shows pixels, we see the size of the image in pixels. So, change the width here to be 300 pixels. Because the Constrain Proportions option is ticked, when we change the width of the image, the height will change in proportion to the width. We press OK, and the image is resized. Now the image is smaller, and we can use the Save for Web option to save it for use on our website. If you'd like to see more about the Save for Web option, it's covered in another video tutorial on the HTML and CSS book.com website called Tools to Edit and Save Images. Let's look at a more complicated situation. This time we want to create another image that's 300 pixels square. But the picture we're using isn't square, it's a portrait shot. A portrait image is taller than it is wide. It's worth noting that this image has been saved as a GIF file. GIF images use a limited colour palette to make the file size of the image smaller. So before we resize this image, we change the image mode to RGB colour. You only need to worry about this step for GIF images. If we just make the height of this image 300 pixels, it'll be 199 pixels wide, because it's not square. Photoshop has the concept of a canvas on which the picture is created, so we need to increase the size of the canvas by going to the Image menu and selecting Canvas Size. In this dialog box, we set the width to be 300 pixels. The anchor box underneath allows us to specify where the extra space is added around the picture. At the moment, the image is in the centre, and if we make the canvas wider, we'll have an equal gap to the left and the right of the image. We could indicate that that space should be added to the right of the image by changing the anchor box like so. This will make the extra space appear on the right of the giraffe. Here you can see that the new area of the canvas is not the same colour background. Since the image is on a solid colour background, we can take the ink dropper tool, which allows us to find the colour of the background, and we can then fill in the gaps using the paint bucket tool. If we go back a couple of steps, you can also see that when I increase the size of the image, I could have specified the colour that the extension of the canvas would be. Clicking here brings up the same colour palette box and the eyedropper tool that you just saw. We now have an image that's the correct size for use on our site, and we can save the image using the Save for Web option. But what happens if we have an image that's not on a solid background? In this case, we cannot fill in the missing parts of the picture in the same way. So, we're just going to select a part of the image to use. To do this, we use the Crop tool and select an area of the image that we want to appear. Once you've made your initial selection, you can adjust it by clicking and dragging on the little boxes around the edge. Holding down the Shift key when using this tool ensures that the selection is square. You can also look in the information window to see the width and the height of the selection. Don't worry if the selection is too big, because we can use the technique you saw at the first part of the video to reduce the size of the image. Once you have your selection, you can press the Enter key or the Return key to crop the image. Again, we use the Save for Web option to save it before using it on our site. So, If your website design requires images that are a specific shape, you need to be careful when picking images to make sure that they're large enough and to make sure that the information will fit in the shape you allocated. Alternatively, you can select larger images and crop them, so long as you're not going to lose important detail from the shot. This tutorial is an accompaniment to the book HTML and CSS. To find out more, visit the website at htmlandcssbook.com.